y'all. It's me. Little old me. Old me. How y'all doing tonight? That is some hot coffee, y'all. Look at it. Can you see the steam? Maybe if I put it against this. Something dark. Can you see it? That's a lot. I think my husband's computer just talked. So how are y'all doing? Are y'all having a good evening? It's Easter. Easter Eve. And I am doing my Bethie Bible devotion. I'm going to do the best I can because I'm not a preacher. But I think what I want to talk to y'all about tonight, hold on, I'm trying to scooch up, is very important. And so I'm going to get right to it. Easter is a special time for Christians. And it's also a great time for non-Christians just to check out the story because churches are on their best behavior. They've got all their pretty stuff out. They got Easter lilies. They usually floof up the yards, and they usually act a lot more loving. And y'all say, well, it shouldn't be like that. Well, you know what? You're dealing with human beings, so just chill. No, of course it shouldn't be like that. We should be like that every single day as Christians. But sometimes when we think about Jesus in our most serious notes, it doesn't get any more serious than the crucifixion and the resurrection. The agony of the crucifixion, the joy of the resurrection. So, I really pondered and prayed about God. It's such an important message, Easter, good Palm Sunday and Good Friday, and which is the crucifixion, and then 3 days later the resurrection, and then talking about a life with Christ. There's so many things you could pack into that, and you can go to each of the Gospels. You can pull from all of them. I heard a sermon. Our church has both Saturday night and Sunday morning services because it's a little bit larger congregation, and they're trying to just make sure that whatever's convenient for you, like if you have family and you're traveling, you still have a way to come to a service. If you're a mom and you're providing a huge meal for your family on Sunday and you want to come on Saturday night, that's fine, because the important thing is that you come and that you have a special celebration. Now, obviously, we celebrate Jesus all of our lives every moment, but there is something to coming to his end and his resurrection that's important to us, and that's what I want to get to. And so it's a Holy Week is a time to reflect. It's a time to say, besides every other day that I love you, Jesus, I'm especially thankful when I stop and think of what you went through for me and what it accomplished. And so let's just get right into it. You can read the stories. There'll probably be tons of sermons if you want to go out on YouTube. And I would encourage you to go to Dogwood Church and listen to Pastor Keith's message, because it's incredible. If I have a way to upload it, I will. It was that good. He kind of talks like Andy Griffith. I don't know if you like Andy Griffith, but he just kind of takes a story. He's a good storyteller. He takes a story like the story of Christ and all the stages of his ending, whether it was his betrayal, whether it was going before the courts, whether it was the flogging, whether it was the actual resurrection, whether it was after the resurrection, that time period, and then after the crucifixion, sorry. And then the actual resurrection, then what happened next before he ascended. That's all really exciting stuff, but to tell it in a really casual way is kind of cool. So he does that very, very well. A lot better than I ever could, so that's why he's a pastor and I'm not. But anyway, so I could go into all of that, but that wouldn't be a short devotion. That would be like weeks of Bible study or a really long sermon. But I don't have that much time. So I am going to talk to you about why it matters to you. I did learn out some facts tonight that I just thought were interesting, and y'all may know all this kind of stuff, but in Deuteronomy, I think it's 21, the Bible talks about that there can't be any dead bodies on the Sabbath, so it was really important that if someone had been crucified, that they were taken down and buried outside the city walls, all that kind of stuff. That all had to be done before the Sabbath, one thing, no working, and also just the dead bodies. Joseph of Arimathea, who was a very wealthy man, and he was part of the Sanhedrin, which I think there were 71 people in the Sanhedrin that Rome allowed. One of the ways that Rome, as they conquered areas, was to keep peace. One of the things they did was allow some of the peoples of the areas they conquered to be over, to kind of lord over the others, to just kind of keep peace. If there was traditions, if there was cultural things, they let them run it. And the Sanhedrin was who did that in Rome for the Jewish people. And Joseph of Arimathea. Now, this isn't Joseph, Jesus's earthly father. There's different Josephs in the Bible. Coat of many colors, not that one. Arimathea, he was a rich man, and he therefore had his own tomb. And what they used to do is they would carve out of the side of a mountain a tomb, and then they also carve this groove in and carve out a stone that would roll. You've ever heard of a tombstone? It's because the stone was cut more like, not like a ball, but more like a wheel, and it would roll in front into those grooves that had been carved out in front of it, and it would seal it. And it was huge. It would take many men to roll it, and it would seal in the dead body. And one of the other things they did to keep the odor and just any possible disease to come out of the dead body was they would put on oils and perfumes to basically mummify the body. And 75 pounds worth was what was used for Jesus, and that was the amount that you would use on a king. No coincidence. But the Roman guard had, Roman government, had heard that Jesus had made claims that he would, he directly said to them that when they asked who he was, he said that he was God, and he would prove it by, go ahead and kill me, and I will raise up again on the third day. So they'd heard this. They'd heard rumors of the fact that he was going to die, but he would be raised again. And so they assigned the Roman guard. That would be like our Army Rangers or Navy SEALs. And they were assigned to put the Roman seal on that tombstone, which meant it had been sealed by the Roman government. It was not to be touched. And then post a Roman guard in front of it to make sure that the disciples couldn't come and steal the body and make it look like he rose from the dead, because then it would just get all this uproar and all this sort of stuff and possibly put them out of power. So it's really important that they did that. And the long story short is, when the angels came and rolled away the stone, the guards were terrified and they ran for it. And they went and told the Sanhedrin what had happened, and so they paid them handsomely, and they said, this is the story you're to tell, that the disciples came and they stole the body. And that rumor still goes around today, that some people in scholarship of ancient, or what they call books of antiquity, that they feel like that this never really happened the way that they said, that Jesus wasn't actually dead. If he did show up, he'd only swoon. And when you look at the wounds that he incurred, it was amazing that he could even live it all through it. Most people didn't. That's why they had the law of 39 lashes, because more than that in the human body, they just bleed to death or pass out and die. And anyway, there's so much to get into. I don't want to get into too much detail, but the bottom line is, this was the best of the best. Imagine saying, okay, here's a bunch of fishermen, commercial fishermen, and a few other guys, and they came and overpowered the Army Rangers or the Navy SEALs with no training, by the way. And the Roman guard was known for having the best training in the empire. So, or the fact that maybe they just, they all passed out at one time, and the disciples slipped in while they fell asleep and moved the stone. It's just the likelihood of the rumors and the discrediting of what happened at that tomb is less likely, and it would be harder to prove that than what really happened. And the fact that these Roman guards said they were these angels. I mean, they even saw them and said, this is what happened. It terrified them. So that was just some of the interesting facts. I've heard pieces of that before, but it's just good to hear a pastor who really knows this stuff kind of remind you of that kind of thing. But the things that I wanted to point out was, the resurrection proves three things about Jesus, and you might find it important to know these three things. One, that he's God, and that's exactly who he claimed to be all along. And he proved it because only God can bring about life and death. And Jesus was resurrected from the dead, and the Father resurrected him. And he had the power over life and death. Before he died, he raised people up from the dead, people proven dead. And so that's one thing. Not to mention the Jews themselves, the Pharisees, claimed that he claimed to be God, and they said that's what we're charging him with. It's blasphemy, except that he proved that he was at the resurrection. So that's one thing that the resurrection proves. The second was that he has power over life and death, which again makes him God. He has the power over sins, the power to forgive sin, the power over demons, which he proved by casting them out many times. He has the power over the universe. He made it. And he said that all power and authority had been given to him in Matthew 28:18. And then also that he keeps his word. Scholars say there's about 11 sightings of Jesus after he died and was resurrected. He said that he was coming back, and he did. And I know that certainly at the tomb where Mary, and this is Mary of Magdala, who had been a prostitute and had a demon cast out of her by Jesus, and she had come to see him and was the first to go back to the disciples and say, "No, I've seen him." He appeared in the upper room. Then he appeared in the upper room again because Thomas didn't believe, and he came back. That's when he said, put your hand in the holes of my, put your fingers in the holes and put your hand in my wound on the side, and know that I'm God. And that's when Thomas, doubting Thomas, we talk about, fell down and worshipped him and called him God. Now this is going to switch into part 2. I hope you don't mind. This will be a part 1, part 2. Just because it's Easter, I hope you don't mind. So we'll let it go ahead and go into a part 2 video.